that one thing your parents taught you that later turned to be totally wrong? Story 1, that I would get pregnant as soon as I had told me that as a teenager. So I was terrified I'd get pregnant every time I interacted with a penis. Now a decade later, I'm married and have been actually trying, and it turns out it's not as easy as they made it sound. Story 2, when I was 11 years old, I was crying hysterically over my father's treatment of me after being placed with him after my mother passed away. I won't go into what was happening. I will, however, say that in my despair, I made the comment that I wished I could be a wild animal instead of human, like a bear, for example. My father told me that I was dumb for saying that, as mother bears correct their cubs by picking them up and bashing them into rocks until they stop making the mistake they did. I thought bears were essentially monsters for a very long time after. Edit, thank you all so much for your kindness, funny comments, and sharing your own stories. Reading it all has really brightened my day. I have only told a handful of very close people's stories from those years, so suddenly seeing mass support felt really nice. To the people asking if it was indeed a lie, I highly believe so. I haven't been able to find any evidence that bears will actually ever do this, and I have long since learned that my dad has a huge problem with lying, doesn't understand how to identify credible sources, and holds many fringe beliefs. I used to think he was some sort of super genius, as that is what he also claimed. It is why I so readily believed him back then. Story 3, my mom made me believe that privacy was a privilege. It wasn't until I started studying childcare and learning in depth about the rights of the child that I learned it is a right, and that my mom is full of bullshit. Edit, UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, UNCRC Article 16. Story 4, men and women couldn't be friends. I was raised in a weird religion in which almost any amount of communication with the opposite was seen as dating. Regularly texting a girl that may as well be dating. It's a belief that I've had to unlearn after moving out so that I could have normal friendships with people. Story 5, that work should be something you love. It just has to be tolerable. If you make work your life, you will feel hit hard by the rough stages of work, which any job has, and you'll feel bad for taking a sick day or miss it when you should be enjoying time off. Story 6, I asked my dad what the biggest number ever was. He either realized it was an impossible question and I was going to argue if he said there was no biggest number, or was messing with me. Anyway, imagine the laughter when in like 3rd grade we all had to go around and name a number, and I said big toe trillion. Story 7, animals don't get cold. They're made for being outside. If you stop reacting, they'll stop bullying you. No, it's not racist to say that. They're not gay, they're just confused. Don't worry about the college loans. You're smart, you'll get a good job, and pay that off in a few years. Story 8, while I was mostly raised by my grandparents, we live in an all-white community, and my grandparents believed every terrible thing they had ever been told about black people. I spent my youth being fed those lies, but everyone I knew was white, and I couldn't imagine it being true. When I got to college, I met my first non-white people and was able to verify that the things they believed just weren't true. And luckily, both of them realized that before they passed away. Story 9, when I was in kindergarten, the teacher asked us to go home and ask our parents how many days are in a year. So I went home and asked my dad, 240 days, son. Imagine my disappointment the next day when my teacher said that was wrong. Dad swears I never asked that, or if I did, I misunderstood his answer. But I heard what I heard. Story 10, your job is to do whatever your boss tells you to do. This led to a bunch of stupid situations of both me getting walked all over by employers and me quitting jobs over things that could have been fixed with a conversation. Story 11, that I will become stupid if I eat too many hazelnuts, and that I will become dark-skinned if I eat lamb spleen. Yes, they just wanted them for themselves, and yes, my parents were racist. Story 12, respect your elders, but in the sense that you should just keep quiet when you disagree with somebody older than you. Turns out many people are awful regardless of their age. Don't get me wrong, my default is to respect any new person I meet, but when a person has repeatedly shown me that they don't care about my feelings or even basic logic, I won't hold back from speaking my mind calmly, even if they see this as disrespectful. Story 13, we do not drink regular Coca-Cola because red soda cans would clash with our jewelry. Here is $1. Go get mommy a Diet Coke, and you may have a Diet caffeine-free Coke. It is gold-colored, and you are good today. We do not put sugar in our tea because the corrosive effects of glucose could degrade the glaze on the china. The pink packets are saccharin, and the blue are aspartame. Aspartame pairs best with Pico black tea. For green tea, use saccharin. Trust mommy. Dear, we try new foods to be polite, and we find something nice to say about them to the hostess. If you cannot think of anything good to say about the food, say what a lovely party, Mrs. B, or praise how everything looks. Yes, exactly. Just like a picture is perfect. You've been reading again. Of course, we could go eat food we know we like afterwards if there's nothing we can eat much of. But try something to be polite. Well, the doctors say girls can't get autism, though, so I expect we're just picky eaters. Ladies often are. Story 14, that you can be anything. There are some things in life that you just will never be cut out for. My parents told me that I will be the next president if I work towards it. My family told me I would become an astronaut one day and have millions of dollars in a mansion. Some people think that you can do anything, but you're not. Story 15, they said, don't be friends with the bad kids. For my parents, my whole class were bad, even they were quite normal. So I ended with no friends because my parents didn't allow me to go outside with them. Those bad kids are now normal, successful, and friends with each other, but not with me. Story 16, that crying and expressing your emotions in general is rude, oversensitive, and embarrassing. It's not. And I hate that I still feel like a piece of when I can't hold back my tears. Expressing your emotions is natural and healthy. Crying is a mechanism to let go of emotional distress instead of overloading your brain. Story 17, not all of these were taught, but they were usually uttered as if they were unquestioned truths. Our car that had a 2-3-liter engine used 2-3 liters of gas every time we turned the ignition key, because when the engine starts, it immediately fills up all of the cylinders with liquid gas. Just one fact out of my mom's extensive library of automotive mechanics. A person who is waiting for something good does not wait in vain. Don't be so lazy. People your age doesn't need vacation. When you're working on a car's electrical system, you should disconnect the positive cable from the battery, because then the battery will be disconnected, but it will still be ground properly. Another fact out of my mom's extensive library of automotive mechanics. If you don't act how I think you should act, the other kids will think you're weird, and then they won't want to be your friends. I know exactly what is going on inside your head. Don't try to tell me anything else. You are completely lost in your own fantasy world. Keep your feet on the ground. Those things you're talking about, they're completely unrealistic. You're going to get a very unpleasant meeting with reality one day. A completely normal thing to say to a 9-year-old kid who is playing with Lego bricks. I don't know if this last one and the previous one fits here, but the other ones made me think of them. Often when I got angry, mad, or upset about something, would be bluntly told that I was so easily angered. I supposedly exploded for the tiniest little things. If I wanted to get anywhere with my life, I had to learn how to control my anger. Then a few days later, I would hear that I shouldn't keep everything bottled up so much. I should allow myself to be angry and express my emotions. But of course, if I should happen to get angry, upset, or mad about something, then that was completely wrong of me. And then when I kept things to myself again, that was wrong too. The cycle went on and on and on. I don't know how to fit it properly into the rest of the topic, but things like these made me think that I was a very unstable person. If I start feeling like a highly unstable person now, I try to remember what the therapist I went to during my 2 first years in high school said after our first meeting. He told my parents that I had an unusual ability to see situations from the outside, think rationally, and stay calm. Most other kids would have completely snapped a long time ago. Story 18, well, mine are conspiracy theorists, so basically everything was nuts and incorrect. That I'm autistic because they gave us vaccines at school. The government cops have spy monitoring equipment in every inch of our home minus 5G, and cell phones are killing everyone. Jet fuel can't melt steel beams. Various 90s era incel for divorce guys. Then various aughts. 10s incel for divorce guys. There are secret messages and license plate numbers. Gang stalking. My mother and her new guys are going to rape and or murder-suicide us. Though he stopped talking about this one around when I was 7. That Woody Allen did nothing wrong. What the age of consent should really be absolutely wonderful things to hear as a child. Though he believes in vaccines now that the COVID-19 one is coming out soon. So there's minor improvements 30 years later. I think he takes his meds now, and he's dramatically less weird to be around. Story 19, that having the interior car light on while driving is illegal. My dad used to flip if we turn it on. In my country, it isn't illegal, but advised against not to, as it can create glare and obscure your vision. This was confirmed to me by a traffic officer. Story 20, don't trust anyone. Ever said my dad, who is retired with no friends and no social life after frequently burning bridges throughout his life. I was about 8. It took me almost 20 years to actually learn how to socialize and have trusting, healthy relationships with people. Story 21, bullies are cowards. No, they aren't. They're evil scum who are naively capable of ruining your life for decades after, and they're not afraid to do so. Story 22, don't compare yourself with your friends when they got something I didn't have, while comparing me with my friends whenever they did better than me at something. Story 23, really weird and specific. Also kind of TMI. Sorry, my aunt always told me and my sibling that periods were just a drop of blood. I think my cousins heard that and assumed periods lasted only a day and weren't that bad. My mom always said that our family doesn't have bad periods either. My periods are like 9 days, and me and my sibling both bleed way more than just a drop. Those are especially heavy at the start. Both of us have had cramps, so bad we felt like throwing up at some point, like WTF guys. Bill Cosby is a great role model. Story 24, a job with a good paycheck is more important than your mental health. Edit ID like to say my parents are very loving and I have a great relationship with them. They're just of that mindset that you have to buster for money and save up then enjoy life and retirement. Story 25, that any person who told me I was pretty was only saying that because they wanted to do bad things to me. My entire childhood teenage years was spent backing away from people and telling them they were wrong rather than taking the compliment and saying thank you, which really damaged my self-esteem in the long run. Even now, as a 24-year-old with a husband, I still struggle with accepting compliments from people. Even my husband, because I automatically think they wanted my pants, which isn't the case like 98 of the time. Story 26, they don't let stupid people in the military. Like, I get that my dad was disappointed I got a D on my report card, but one, that's wrong. And two, there's got to be a better way to express disappointment than that. Story 27, that marriage was easy. Ironic considering they never communicated, fought a lot, and just never seemed to enjoy each other's company. I guess when you ignore your problems, marriage is easy. Story 28, just keep your nose to the grindstone. Work really hard. Don't make waves or draw attention to yourself, and your bosses will reward and promote you to the top. Story 29, that as long as I study hard and get good grades, I will find the job that I love, and I won't have to work a day in my life. How does that even make sense? I'm a couple months away from graduating with a cognitive science BS, and I have absolutely no idea what I'm going to do once I'm out of school, because I've never had a real job before. Story 30, I was the first person in my family to have a job in a conventional office. They thought I was a monster to accept a relocation bonus, paid vacation, and try to work a reasonable schedule. They wanted me to be one of those people who is always willing to put in extra hours or just sit at my desk for appearances. The problem with this is that everyone in the office hates people like that, and the management isn't going to hook you up in the end anyways. Story 31, therapists are useless and a waste of money. Yeah, but my therapist has helped me through panic attacks, which was way more helpful than being yelled at during one mom. Story 32, be polite to everybody. Sure, they honor you with believing you are a weak person, so they try to gain advantages, doesn't count you as person, etc. Story 33, don't invest that $10,000 into that Google IPO. You'll just end up throwing your money away. You need to get a new car. You won't always have a calculator on you. Story 34, if you get in trouble at school, it will go on your permanent record. My mom would know. She was a teacher. Why would she lie? Turns out getting in trouble at school did not prevent me from going to college or getting a job. I could have been a fucking legend. Story 35, that people who don't go out drinking multiple nights per week and the weekend are boring and will lead boring, uneventful lives. Turns out that being boring and uneventful meant not getting in trouble with the law, maintaining good health, and having an actual positive, non-chaotic relationship with your wife and kids. Story 36, my grandmother raised me. She taught me to always pronounce pneumonia with the P. I got laughed at a lot because my stubborn refused to believe my grandmother was wrong. Story 37, do I have to pick just one? Because just today my mom told me that the amount of confidence you have is a given, as in apparently I was born with low self-esteem, and there's nothing she could have done. Doesn't matter that she has extremely low self-esteem and has been projecting it on me since I was very little. Nope, that has nothing to do with it. I was just born with it apparently. Story 38, my parents told me for 8 years that chocolate was poisonous to children. I went 8 years without chocolate, and when I tried at a friend's house, I was sure I was going to die. Those bastards lied to me. Story 39, having with a boyfriend would cause him to get bored of me and seek greener pastures. As you gave him what he wanted, so why would he stick around? Turns out guys generally want to sleep with their GF more than once, and are not inclined to leave because they stand to get some. How does that make sense? And B guys have emotions, and are capable of loving even if that has, and are not just seeking missiles who think non-virgin women are unworthy of respect. Never give up on your dream. If you want and pursue something enough, you will get it. I used that advice to get a celebrity attractive guy here in Austria, to be my boyfriend, and I ended up getting a restraining order against me. I narrowly avoided an ankle bracelet. Thanks, parents. Story 40, everyone parents. Teachers all told me I need to improve my handwriting because it's barely legible, but they told me when I get older, I will be judged by my handwriting at work and stuff. I've been working full-time for almost 7 years since graduating and never had to write anything for others. Just mostly signatures. My field of work is all doctors and researchers, so my handwriting is right at home regardless. Story 41, if your wife asks if she looks good in something, and she doesn't, say so. I'd rather know I should change into something else than be embarrassed later. Thank Thanks for the terrible advice, Mom. Story 42, my parents said that in the U.S., it was illegal for people under 21 to drink alcohol, even if they were at home with their parents. I later learned at school from a retired law enforcement guy that 21 was the drinking age for people in public and for people to buy alcohol, and that younger people could drink if they were at their own home in front of their parents. I told my parents this after I got home, but they then told me that the retired law guy was wrong and insisted that they were right. Wow. Story 43, mother, the first time you have will hurt, and his terrible doctor while the hymen is supposed to tear. I don't know who needs to hear this, but these are both false. Story 44, ignore them, and they'll stop bullying you. Never really stopped the big kid from throwing my stuff all over the sidewalk while we were all waiting for the bus. Story 45, it's weird. I was actually talking to my brother about it this morning, and we were taught to always listen to authority, which maybe sound good at first, but there were instances where a teacher yelled at us for something totally uncalled for, or an adult said something really mean to us, and we just thought it was okay because they were adults and adults are always right. Story 46, my dad is a Jehovah's Witness, and despite some logical blind spots when it comes to his religion, he's actually very smart and trustworthy otherwise. However, when my brother and I were kids, he sat us down and told us that one day the apocalypse would happen, and before it actually did, some people would come after us because of our religion, and we would have to run away from home and hide with the other witnesses, otherwise those people could hurt us. And because no one knew when the apocalypse was coming, would have very little warning, to this day, I don't have a solid idea what he was talking about, but I assume it has to do with some kind of religious persecution in the end times predicted by Revelations, or some. I was maybe 7 or 8 at the time, and as I got older and learned critical thinking skills, I recognized the scenario for what it was, but at the time it scared the out of me. Story 47, men are useless, abusive babies that need women in order to survive. People will always judge you and have something nasty to say. No, Mom, you just at interacting with others. Edit, not stuck. Story 48, that bullies only bully because they're insecure and that the best way to deal with a bully is to empathize with them. My attempt at empathy got the kicked out of me literally a little bit as well, but that tends to happen when someone drops a lump of concrete on your head and fractures your skull and increase the amount of people bullying me from 1 to 8. Good times. Story 49, that keeping a job you hate is more important than recovering from a relapse of anxiety and depression. Jobs are important, yes, but what's the point if I'm not alive to go and do it? So yeah, there's that. Story 50, Christianity and being passive-aggressive. They didn't directly teach me to be passive-aggressive. I just learned it from their behavior. That Harry Potter was evil, anything else that had magic in it like dragon tales, and I wasn't allowed to watch Sesame Street because of the vampire. Story 51, it's not illegal to turn the light on in a car while somebody is driving, though having had somebody turn the light on in a car while I'm driving, it should be. Story 52, not really taught, but my parents have both told me a few times that they know me better than I know myself. Yeah, that's why I've been passively suicidal for months and have recently turned to self-harm and been trying to cry for help while also not making it too obvious. Story 53, I need to find a husband and to have kids to be truly happy in life. I feel like I can pass on both, and I'm perfectly happy and in solitude with my cats. Story 54, don't report work injuries or you'll never get hired again. Thanks, Dad. Destroyed my back at work when I was 19 and received no compensation at all, and my whole life is as a result. Thanks again. Story 55 here is 3 things mine try to tell us dinosaurs were fictional. The moon landing wasn't real and vaccinations don't work. They're lovely people. They were just very misinformed when they were young parents. Story 56, that I would never get a well-paying career doing what I loved. Turns out that with hard work, talent, and dedication, you could do almost anything you well please, since this isn't the 1970s anymore. Story 57, that the crust of bread is where all the nutrients are. I was well in adulthood when it occurred to me how ridiculous this is and that they were just trying to get me to eat all of my sandwich. Story 58, the entire world is crazy except for us really mess a lot of my family up big time. I realized something wasn't right when I was around 10 and took a different attitude that set me apart and also socially isolated me from my family when I was 12, moved out as soon as possible. Most of my family only have each other, no friends. Luckily, Ido. Story 59, what goes around comes around. If someone is mean to you, one day karma will come back to bite them. The root fact is that some people never receive their comeuppance. They'll never feel sorry for what they've done to others because one way or another, life won't force them to. Inherited fortune, good luck, being in the right place at the right time, happening upon once-in-a-lifetime opportunities, a lot of the time, that good fortune isn't dependent on how kindly or how cruelly they treated others. Some people just win that cosmic lottery. This isn't to say that kindness doesn't matter and that cruelty is never punished. Just that it's faulty thinking to soothe yourself with the thought that one day that person will be sorry. It might be good schadenfreude to find out that someone who was cruel to you is now paying for that. But it doesn't change those past circumstances, and it doesn't make you the better person, just a bitter one. Story 60, I'm just big boned, just a growing boy, it's only baby fat. No, Mom, I have an unhealthy relationship with food and eat my emotions. I also should have probably chalked down more veggies. Story 61, I was switching jobs IT. Late 80s, every 2 years or so at that point. They told me that I would never get ahead, that you needed to stay at a single company for decades. Story 62, my dad used to smoke, but Mom didn't. That's how he knew cigarettes were bad. Turns out Mom also used to chain smoke, badly back when cigarettes were considered healthy. She didn't admit to that until I was 17. I'm 23 now, still never smoked cigarettes and have no interest. Also found out my aunt was lesbian when I came out as, and my mother was convinced her sister had turned me. This was at 18. Story 63, I had a friend when I was 8 that had a medical issue that caused him to lose control over half of his face. My parents told me it was because he was sleeping under a fan, because they didn't like that I got out a noisy box fan to help sleep. I went back to sweating through the night, and they went back to their room with a ceiling fan. Story 64, it's better to just walk away than stand up for yourself. I was bullied my entire school life up until grade 11. All I ever did was try to walk away, but I was an angry kid because of my home life, and people knew it. Story 65, one of my parents put forth this claim after hearing it from a family friend. Extracurricular activities don't matter when you're in college. Now, some extracurricular activities might be less important than others, but in general, I think that this statement is incorrect. Story 66, to never save money and always spend, get loans and credits, because you never know when it's your time to go. As an adult, I finally managed to convince my mother to start a savings account. Story 67, whenever we had roast, not ham. Not ham lunch meat. Not hot dogs, not bacon. Not when the rest of my family ate sausage. We had to eat applesauce in order to avoid getting worms trichinosis. Turns out this was an old wives' tale and not exclusive to my mother. Story 68, this gives me a haha. Women are the weaker. Super dumb thing to say to your daughter. Reading is better than watching movies. Why? There's dumb books and great movies. Story 69, that I was smart. I wasn't stupid, I was just average, but I heard you were smart so often that I wouldn't even try when things got hard. I just thought, if I can't do it, it just must not supposed to be done because I'm so smart. It wasn't until my mid-20s I realized this was just their own way of excusing not getting me extra help in school when I needed it. Story 70, that naps are wrong. They never flat out said that, but everything they said about naps made it sound like I shouldn't do it. They would say things like, oh, but you're going to mess up your sleep schedule, or, but you're going to miss the afternoon. Story 71, that when you get a splinter in your finger, it dries up and goes away by itself. Nope, in August 2019, I got a splinter in my finger. I tried and failed to extract it with tweezers and left it there, trying to ignore the pain I got whenever I bent my finger or touched something. Finally, the next November, I couldn't stand it anymore and booked an appointment with a dermatologist who proceeded to anesthetize my finger and remove the splinter in the only possible way with an electrosurgical unit. As a revenge, I paid for that, and for the subsequent idopovidone treatment of the wound with my mom's credit card. Story 72, the only thing that matters in life is how intelligent you are. My dad's still in denial that his only kid is it, and not to be self-deprecating, I have many skills in other places that I am grateful for and value. It's just that raw intellect memory is not one of them, but he doesn't value anything else. Story 73, if a cop is shorter than the side mirror on your truck, you can't back into their car and drive away. Grew up in a small town with one sheriff, and my father always hated the guy. Story 74, that you should never fight a bully. Tip, fight the bullies. The school will get you in trouble. But listen, I'm 22. That's not even 5 years since high school, and I barely remember getting in trouble. Standing up for yourself gives you lifelong respect.